Okay, good evening, everybody. I'm Shubha Murthy, General Secretary of Research Society, and this is a collaboration with Trust MIT. And I'll start off by telling you all what exactly we do and a little bit about our technical organization. And you'll hear from Yuvraj, who's representing Trust, and then we'll dive in. So, our mission basically an initiative meant to promote research in our college, especially for students who want to get involved in it right from the get go as soon as they enter the university from a grassroots level. Since there's no college wide organization really that has a specific focus on research, we wanted to create a platform where like minded people meet, discuss, share ideas, and our primary goal is to collaborate, moderate, conduct technical projects. And we want to guide students who are, other than that, like on the side, we want to guide students who are interested in research and promote student professor collaborations and really just push this idea of interdisciplinary research in order to produce valuable college level undergraduate research. So, we conduct a wide variety of events like alumni webinars and birds of a feather sessions and paper discussions, etc. But today, our focus will be just a guide to research as an undergraduate, um, telling you everything that we know. And do keep in mind that it varies from field to field. So we've tried our best to give you guys a broad overview of how to go about research. So, with that, Yuvraj, you can talk about trust.
Good evening, everyone. Excuse me. So I'm Yuvraj Jain, and you can think of me as a representative from Thrust MIT. So we are MIT Manipal's rocketry team, and I mean, there's nothing more to say as such to what we do that encapsulates it. Besides from just developing a sounding rocket, which to date, excuse me, very few organizations in India have even done, aside from the government, of course. Uh, we also look into various, fundamental research topics where, like, we look into how to deliver drugs and administer medication to astronauts on like the ISS, for example. So in zero gravity, how you're going to send your medication up? What is the effect of strapping medication onto a rocket? Will it be affected? Things like that. So we are not just limited to making rockets. We want to apply rockets to solve problems that people might face as they reach for the skies effectively in the next few decades. So, with our experience trying to do research, I hope we can convey some of the same to all of those who are present here. So, back to you, Shubha.
Okay, so to start things off, Achintya will start giving you guys a presentation. And we'll all hop on at different times to just go through the paths we've been allotted. And you guys can ask questions on the chat as and when we're talking, and we'll try to answer to the best of our capability towards the very end.
Okay, am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Okay, so as Shobha just gave you an introduction, we'll try to get as much we can into like to give you guys a basic idea of how to get started research and how to actually write a paper. So I just like to start with this section of searching for research papers, which is obviously the first step of doing anything. You might want to do a literature review, you might want to write a review paper, you might want to uh, get to know if your idea is actually novel. So, like, it might already exist in the literature. So, this is an absolutely crucial step and is also a necessary step. There is no way you can skip this step. And it's also the step where people struggle the most. I did this in my first year, and I still see juniors doing this, where it's kind of random, where we just use Google as a random search engine rather than a more specialized search engine. And let's be honest, we are technical students, so if anybody should be using the technical side of Google, it should be us. So searching for things randomly does not give you the relevant output or the relevant things you're looking for exactly. And it's honestly shooting arrows in the dark, and very similar to, let's say, how the Trump administration handled the virus. So, how do you do this systematically and how do you do this technically? And also, why should we optimize our search? So, one very good reason is obviously saving time, giving us the results we want, but also there is also a third aspect to this, which is the environmental factor of search engines. So 40% of the internet's carbon footprint is due to Google. And a Google search consumes like 1 to 10 grams of CO2, which is almost equivalent to running a car for 1 mile. Why do I say all this? Again, I'd like to emphasize the fact that we are technical students, so we should keep these things in mind. If it was a random person and if he's using the search engine and does not know about all this, then yeah, it is kind of, it's not excusable, but still. Uh, Looking at the statistics, these are some statistics which you can see, which actually shows that this is actually a serious problem. And you also have to realize that Google is not the only thing operating on the internet. You have Amazon, you have Facebook, and all of them are contributing to the harming of the environment. So how does the Google search actually work? So it works on something called the PageRank algorithm, and you guys might have heard of this. This is very popular in, well, pop culture, and well, Larry Page and Sergey Brin were almost treated as gods at a certain period of time, and they were one of the first people to come up with this algorithm in, I think, the 1980s, where this was actually the topic of the PhD thesis, which they obviously dropped and went on to search Google. A little bit of trivia, which I don't know if you guys know, but one of the guides of Larry Page and Sergey Brin was actually an Indian. His name was Rajiv Motwani, and he was a professor at Stanford, and he was actually a student from IIT Kanpur. And people don't actually know this, but yeah, he also played a very big role in uh, laying the foundations of this algorithm. So how does this algorithm actually work? So these bubbles you see are actually web pages. So the size of the bubble and the percentage given there actually shows the popularity of the web page, on how many times it's been clicked on, how many times you have clicked on it, and things like that. And whenever the popularity of a certain web page increases, the popularity of the other web pages decreases, and the total always stays at 100%. So as you can see, the accordingly a graph is made, which looks something like this. And how is this actually done? And how is Google so good at finding keywords, and maybe sometimes even better than humans in catching syntax which is not normally used? So the deep learning architecture used by Google is called BERT. And okay, that's the other BERT. That's the BERT from Sesame Street, not him. But BERT looks something like this. And this is what Google uses to make sense of nonsensical data. There might be data where even though it's been typed by humans, even I might not be able to make sense out of it, because people in different parts of the world use different languages, different dialects, different acronyms, and people write U as, well, the letter U, which I don't understand frankly, but still people do all kinds of things which are very hard to keep track of. And this is one of the reasons why Google is so good at making sense of nonsensical data, and can arguably even be said that it's better than the other search engines which exist, which, so let's say DuckDuckGo or one of them. So this is how the architecture looks like. And the best way to show you this is a demo. And I just want to give you a shout out. This section of the presentation it has been made and was supposed to be given by Kritika, who is the co-president at RSM, but due to a further prior commitment, she could not be here. But she was nice enough to record a demo for you guys, just to give you an actual live demonstration of how you can use search to your advantage.
But the best way to explain this would be through an actual demonstration. Now, I work in NLP personally, so I'm gonna type in NLP research. NLP is a subfield of artificial intelligence that deals with language. And as you can see, I'm not really getting any great results here. I've just typed in NLP research and I've gotten links to articles and some neuro-linguistic programming, not even related to natural language processing. And that's not what I'm looking for, right? So first up, I'm going to switch to Google for this demo because it'll be easier for everyone to see and understand. I type the same results here, and because Google knows my interests, it also knows the fact that that I'm interested in natural language processing because it's been looking over my shoulder all this while. But yeah, so it starts recommending like papers from 2019, 2020, but again, that's still not what I'm looking for. It does have a couple of results from Google Scholar that that shows up on my feed, but still not really specific. So like I talked about, narrowing down the objective of what it is you're looking for before. Maybe I want to read about papers that come under a specific subfield in NLP, that is text summarization. Now, text summarization is basically associated with condensing large amounts of text into smaller paragraphs. So it's used to sum up entire pages of text into a brief version of it. And here I start to get papers that are related to, some of them are articles, some of them are review papers, but it's still not really giving me the kind of results I want, maybe. Like some of them, like I said, linked to articles, and maybe I'm just looking specifically for papers. Now, the thing is, a lot of research work tends to be in PDF format. So Google search engine has this particular syntax, it's called file type, that allows you to search for articles or something that are associated with a particular file type. In this case, because it's PDF format, I'm going to write PDF. And so I started more results that are actually related to what I'm looking for, journal articles and all of that. Now, the thing is, text summarization is still pretty vague. Maybe I want to do work that is related to Hindi within text summarization. So again, I narrow that down by writing Hindi. And the thing is, because this is such a niche topic in comparison to text summarization, which is pretty open-ended. It could be related, text summarization could be done with a multitude of methods in a multitude of languages. But this is more specific. So I start to get results related to work that's already been done in Hindi, text summarization. Now, the thing is, you'll also get results sometimes that contain only a few of the terms. So maybe it might contain just Hindi, but not text summarization. And this happens a lot in DuckDuckGo, actually. So one way of forcing the search engine to spit out the kind of results of particular kinds of terms. So if I want the results that appear to contain Hindi, it has to contain Hindi, like otherwise it'll be omitted. Then I can put it in inverted commas. Double inverted commas to be precise. And all of these results will contain Hindi no matter what. No matter how far down I go, all of them will contain Hindi. I can also do that with the string text summarization so that all the results have to have this specific phrase in their body or in the metadata or in anything. It has to be present on the web page. And this is actually very useful, especially when you're struggling to get specific results or it's giving you very vague and open-ended results. In fact, like it can be used with a multitude of terms, and because it matches the exact string that you plugged into this inverted commas, it can be used for other purposes as well. Aside from that, Google has its own list of search operators here that I'll be loading up. And personally speaking, I don't find all of them useful, but you might. There's the and, there's the or. This term is used to exclude a certain term or phrase. This acts as a wildcard and will match any word or phrase. There's an example that is given for each of these. I'll be sharing the link in the box, or someone else might. And of course, so there's also this option. It's kind of like it resembles file type, except it limits your results to those from a specific site. So where this comes in handy is, for example, I'm looking through IEEE's papers. I just want to read only publications that have taken place in IEEE conferences or journals. In which case, I use this, what do you say, this particular syntax, and I plug in IEEE Explorer's URL here. So now the search engine will only give me results for IEEE's papers, and if it comes in handy if you're looking at any specific journals papers and you don't want other journal papers to pop up while you're at it, or if you're searching for a specific publication that you forgot the name of or something like that. Aside from this, of course, there are also other academic search engines like Google Scholar, Microsoft Academic, Vegas Score. Google Scholar is the most famous among them, and again, it does the best job at indexing every paper that's published. And of course, every country or nation also tends to have its own specific repositories of academic literature. Aside from this, this is just a brief overview of the search operators that I personally find really useful. Of course, there's also other things like in URL, in title that you might want to check out later. But this should be enough to give you a brief overview of how exactly to go about searching papers and the kinds of queries you should be making when you're looking for papers related to your own field, because it varies from field to field, right? Like certain fields will have design elements to them that computer science might not. So there's that as well. Now I'll be handing it over to Yuvraj to continue on with the rest of the presentation, and he'll be discussing this particular topic.
Okay, so that was Kritika's bit, and Yuvraj, you can go ahead.
Thank you, Achintya, and also Kritika. I see somebody has raised their hand, so you can type your questions in the chat. Meanwhile, so let's take a quick 2-minute break where all of you over here can head over to the chat and probably type a few, 4 or 5 words about what area of research or what area of science interests you, okay, while I start my PPT up and all. Come on, come on. This is gonna get interactive.
I assume all of you are here because you have something specific in your mind that you want to work on. So please don't hesitate to participate.
Okay. We're seeing responses.
Yes, I have one question. Can any person work in this field? Like, if I'm also pursuing, like, let's say mechanical engineering, can I pursue in this field as well? And
what do you mean this field again?
Well, like, let's say I want to do something regarding learn NLP. So, like, can I do it? Can I do it after my pastime as well? Like.
Yes, I will. The panel, I guess, will answer your question more thoroughly at the end. But in short, yes.
All right, that's it.
Okay, so I'm seeing a lot of responses, and one thing I would like to note is over here, everybody is engineers. So if people are interested in social sciences and humanities, but engineers rejoice. So, okay, I'll begin, and I hope everybody can see the slides. And the formative question. So, what I mean by this is there is always a question in the mind of the researcher. I saw a lot of people asking questions about how to do research, how to go about research, and things along those lines, and we'll be covering that now. So you have a question. I am taking that for granted, and let me pick something random from the chat. Let's say, hmm, let's say, fine. I'll just randomly pick here. Biotechnology and genetic engineering. Fine. Okay. For example, um, this is not personally my field, but I'm going to use this example and over the next 30 minutes try to maybe convey how a biotechnology somebody who works in that field, that is, will go about probably doing research. So I'm assuming they already have a question in mind. They want to figure something out. They already have something in front of them. Let's take the example of, okay, biotechnology. Let's take COVID. Okay. And they have this pandemic in front of them, and they have these host of vaccines that were released recently by so many different companies like Pfizer and all of that. And they are like, I think I can make something better. There are 2 doses required. Maybe I can do it in 1 dose. By making the statement, you already have the formative question. Can I make a better vaccine? To do research, you need the formative question. And what else do you need? You also need a signpost, sort of, that I have a question. Where is the first place I will look to answer it? So this hypothetical researcher, he says, maybe I can improve it by, instead of 2 doses, 1 doses. Or maybe I can improve the efficacy of the vaccine, or I can reduce the cost of it, or any number of parameters. And we'll come to how to, in general, select parameters. But now inspiration has struck. Yeah, I want to work in a vaccine. I want to improve a vaccine. I want to improve it. Let's pick a way that is, I want to do it so that only 1 dose is required, no boosters. So what after inspiration strikes? First thing you need to do after inspiration strikes is, I need to know what people are doing right now. What is the status of the field? What was the work that was, that went into all of these vaccines that are there so far? So basically, you do a review of the field you want to get into. Okay. And I'm assuming this biotechnology guy does not have any experience as of this point in vaccines. Yeah. So you move on to the resources on the web. And this is why in this seminar, we covered how to use Google at the very, very beginning. So this is me using Sci-Hub. Some of you might have heard of it. It's been subject of recent controversy, I guess. And it's basically a site where you can access papers, journal papers, standards, engineering standards, whatever, for free. And if you want to read any paper, usually you need to pay $35, $40, $50. Maybe you don't have to do that here. I should put in a disclaimer that it's not technically legal, but if you are interested, you can go into the controversy and find out why it actually doesn't make a difference. So you have Sci-Hub, and the second resource that's most important is going to be LibGen. For the people, I am a third year of engineering BTech, and most people at this point start doing GRE and higher studies. So I have chosen this example here to illustrate that if you want a textbook to study for GRE, this is where you go. And in general, LibGen is a place where you can get things that you would normally find in libraries. So textbooks, previous issues of publications that are sort of periodic, maybe not really going to call them magazines, but you could say in paper publications, or here in paper in PDF, sorry, publications of journals or something like that, though I would prefer to directly look up the paper and sci-hub. Anyways, so LibGen is where you go to find your most basic and fundamental things, your textbooks, basically, to get into the field that you are interested in. So these are the two resources you're going to require to get your brain up to speed on whatever research you want to do. But there is actually another category of resources you may need, given that we are over here, at least all of us Indians. You are going to require some way to test your predictions. Predictions in the sense that you are going to require some way to maybe simulate or design your whatever solution is to your problem statement. Now, again, I am sort of into electronics, antennae, and obviously, since I'm from Thrust, also into rocket engines. So what you see here are again two sites on the internet, again, not technically legal, but these two sites. On the top left is getintopc.com. Again, we'll give you all of the links. And on the bottom right, it's filescr.com. So these sites are basically where you can get industry standard softwares for design, simulation, validation, you name it. Everything is there. From like, maybe Proteus, some of you may have heard of it. It's a electronic CAD design software. Basically, you design circuits and simulate them in that. Then some of you might have heard of ANSYS. On the bottom right, you can see ANSYS popping up in the search results. So if you were to legally buy them, they would cost you $6,000, give or take. At least ANSYS does. Proteus, I'm not very sure. But it's not really feasible, is the point I want to make. So for education purposes and for purposes requiring you to do trial and error to understand your field, to understand what you need to do to achieve the solution, you are going to require software in the modern world. Almost all engineering and design is done on the PC. Before you go to the lab, it's always on the PC, because you save money. Maybe you don't have access to labs. Maybe you don't have the required other resources. Maybe, for example, us, we make rocket motors. Maybe it's not really that safe to do that many trial and errors. So there are a lot of factors due to which you would prefer to do your first forays into that field on your computer. So these are the four resources that you may require. A nice side footnote, I must say, is that Get Into PC gives you direct downloads. You can directly download the files and then unzip and install and whatever. But if you want to get something from FileCR, you'll have to learn how to properly use something called torrenting. And there you have to be a bit careful to guard your privacy and use encryption and all that. And I'm telling you this because unfortunately something that's available on filescr.com may not be available on Get Into PC, so you have to accordingly adjust. Okay, so wrapping this part of things, let's move on to actually getting the work done. So I have now given everybody the places where you can find your resources. And now to what to do with the data. And this is something, again, that's come up a lot in the queries that were sent to us. Let's focus first on the left, the pre-review. Okay, in general, it's called literature review, but I will first stick with pre-review. And I will take the example of our biotechnology researcher. Okay, so there I think is a tool that's called, I am not very sure about the name of the tool, but there are tools. Oh yes, Gromax. So that is a tool that simulates how proteins fold. And proteins are one way of making vaccines. So now this person, the researcher, knows that fine, I might have to use Gromax at some point to see if I can make this vaccine. And the problem is that he opens Gromax site and he doesn't understand a thing. The problem is very common actually. Whenever you try to get into any field, there will be very, very, very specific tools that people will be using there. And that is just the tools. There's going to be very, very specific jargon, as people call it, ways of talking about, you don't know, maybe things like a virus is actually called a vector in biology and things like that. So you have to navigate that as well. And if you sit and open a paper before going through your pre-review, you will not understand anything because it is written for people who are already well versed with this field. Now, this is not to say that all papers are not approachable. Some papers, of course, you can pick them up. They are written in a way to probably serve the layperson. But in general, especially if you're being very specific, like, COVID-19 vaccine, one dose. So, of course, you are not going to find a paper that will be written for the general public. As a result, you have to do a pre-review. The pre-review is going to involve things like you have to sit and read textbooks to actually understand what is the theory behind the field, the intricacies here at least of how a vaccine works. The jargon again automatically comes in, definitions come in. For my field specifically, if it's antenna, so then there will be a horrible load of vector calculus that you have to wrap your head around. So you have to do that. And without doing that, at least in my personal experience, it's very hard to go further. So you go and find textbooks related to your whatever field on LibGen. You use the things that Achintya and Kritika taught you about how to, tailor search queries, and you narrow things down and you read the textbooks. One thing I would like to say is that not all of Google syntax is supported in all of search engines, but the inverted commas and maybe the plus, minus, and or things are usually a general feature of search everywhere. Okay, so textbooks are done. Almost certainly, you did not understand them in the first go. Sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's not. One nice example would be, people have mentioned theoretical physics. If you sit down and do quantum physics, none of it will make sense even after doing the textbook. So what do? You try to physically visualize it. Almost all research is going to result in something physical, unless and until the whole point of the research was to write a mathematical equation. Even that ultimately will result in something physical, maybe not in your lifetime, but it has to result in something substantial, something of value. So in order to see that value in action, you have to go to places like Coursera, NPTEL, edX. Maybe you might have not heard of NPTEL. NPTEL is our homegrown version of edX, maybe, and it has courses free of course, given by people, professors from IITs and so on and so forth. And they have a wide, vast array of topics that they cover. You can even give written exams and get certificates if that's a thing you want. And you go through those courses, and to further solidify your understanding, you consult YouTube channels. Here, I am not very sure because I don't really follow biology as much, but if you were to go into, let's say, there was some theoretical physics floating around in the chat. So theoretical physics, a great place would be 60 symbols. It's a YouTube channel by Brady Heron from Nottingham University, and there are many other channels. I specifically like this one, but anyways, these channels, they show you how it works. Not the more advanced concepts, maybe, but they will almost certainly physically show you how the basics work. And having intuition and a fundamental understanding of what you're dealing with is very important going forward, as you'll see in a few minutes. So we are done with pre-review, and this is just the pre-review. We will now move on to the actual literature review. And scientific literature is divided into 4 parts: analytic, empirical, simulational, and review. And I think I'll quickly just go over. So analytic is basically purely theoretical research papers. Some journals are even like theoretical research letters, physics letters. They're purely theoretical. So they deal purely start to finish mathematics, at least in that scenario, in that field. Empirical papers are papers that are focused on performing an experiment, getting certain results, which they may or may not expect, and then rationalizing them, handing it off to the theoretical people and saying that explain this. That's one thing. Second thing is that for further research, they earmark certain aspects and then say that future researchers do this. So they help you go further in some sense. The new and emerging field is simulational. And recently, in the past decade or two, where simulational tools like ANSYS and other commercial tools made it very easy for even the common man to access simulation as a way to do science. And basically, these papers focus on taking a given situation, putting it into a computer, running the basic equations, the laws of physics, and seeing what the results are. In fact, even protein folding works like this. You just work with the laws of physics. So, sorry, the laws of chemistry. My bad. So, simulational papers, and actually simulational papers and analytical papers are now sort of converging, that simulational results are not necessarily limited to what is physically possible in the world as we know it. It's just mathematics in the end, even on a computer. So you can simulate wildly unrealistic scenarios, like from the human society's perspective anyway, but completely valid from a scientific perspective. And as a result, you end up with some very futuristic scenario in your paper. But that is simulational discovery, actually, this is called. And it's actually a growing field as well, in mostly majorly material sciences. They hypothesize materials that have properties that they want and run the simulation. Simulation comes fine, great. Then they tell the chemist, please make a material that looks like this I want. So that's how simulational discovery works. And finally, review papers, where they summarize the most recent research that's been done in the field or specific field. And most review papers actually literally have review in the title, so it makes it easier to search for them using the in URL, or well, not really in URL, in title that is present on Google or Google Scholar or wherever you are trying to find this paper. So review papers are the next type of resource that you look at after pre-review is done. And after that, you look at the type of paper you want to see, depending on your um, field. Our biology researcher might look at simulational papers because he's probably trying to approach the vaccine problem from a different perspective than people have already approached it, for example. Anyways, so this actually concludes the section. Uh, this is how to find, that section basically was how to find the resources that you're going to require, where to find them, and in what approximate order to peruse them, so that you have a very concrete understanding of the very specific field that you want to get into. Okay, so I'll take a minute. I hope everybody's following me so far. Okay, there is someone who says something about psychology. Unfortunately, psychology doesn't really fall here into engineering. It falls into humanities. So I'm sorry, but we can't accommodate something like that. Um, though if somebody does have some knowledge, they're free to discuss in the chat as we proceed. Okay, let's continue with the next section. The essential methods. So now you have caught your brain up to speed, and you know what's going on in the field. The guy who at the beginning of last section did not have a clue how vaccines worked, now has a clue how vaccines work. And because he's actually read the research papers, the review papers on how the Pfizer maybe vaccine was made, how the Covaxin was made, Covishield was made, he knows what are the people thinking right now. So now we have a direction. What new things can I do? And now we come to doing them. What is the method of doing research? The physical act after you're done reading all of your textbooks and papers. So these are the essential methods of research. And I am very, very, very sure most of you would have heard about the scientific method. In short, it is a rigorous but very general way of rationally solving problems. As you can see that we start with an observation. I'm going to fill in the blanks with the biotech guy helping me. My observation, the vaccines right now require 2 doses. My question, can I make a vaccine with 1 dose? The hypothesis, now I'm guessing, okay, I don't know bio that much. The hypothesis, maybe there's a way of making a protein that will stay in the body for longer. So you don't need to give it twice, just once, and you will still be safe from corona. So hypothesis, we have it. And the concept of an hypothesis is to basically a guess, make a guess. Okay, so this is a guess. Note that it is not random. This guess has been informed by all those hours of reading that this person has done on this very specific topic. Your guesses need to be sane so that your results are sane and so that you do not waste resources and time. So it needs proper due attention should be given to the hypothesis. So in the hypothesis, I actually already, jammed in the prediction. The prediction was basically, if it stays longer in the body, you will be safe from corona for longer. And what's the experiment? The scientific method would have you make the vaccine or whatever it is, protein that you're making, just walk up to the hospital and say that I need people to shoot people up with like protein and let's see if it works. You obviously cannot do that. for multitudes of reasons. That's why the scientific method requires a little bit of tweaking, which we will shortly cover. But that's what the experiment is. You make your prediction, you actually materialize the hypothesis that you did, you run the experiment, you see if anything changes. And anything changes with respect to what? With respect to the null hypothesis. And I will explain that also in just a minute. So for now, let's assume that it didn't work. And to be fair, that's a very, very, very honest assumption. Happens 99% of the times, you never get it right the first time. So you go back and you say that, protein is not going to work out the way it is right now. Note that right now. Hypothesis must be rejected always based on the results. Never just throw something out completely. Unless and until the results say, yes, please just throw it out completely. So you repeat the process like the graph shows. And if it works finally, then you can say, okay, fine, it works. This is the reason why it works. And these are my trials. I am sure some of you might have heard phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 trials. These are the results. And done. I solved the problem that I wanted to solve. Research complete. Publish me. Yay. That was the scientific method. This is something you've probably not seen before. The engineering method. And where this comes is between prediction and experiment. And the engineering method as such is something that at least I have cooked up. This graph is my approximation of what happens in real life. First, you identify the problem. I need to make a protein that makes the body think that, I have corona. But it doesn't, land me in the hospital. It should just induce an immune response. That was my problem. Due attention should be given to the problem. If you choose the wrong problem statement, you will get the wrong results. So it takes a lot of literature review to properly identify what is going to be the right question to ask here. Now you must select the parameters. And here parameters would be things like what type of protein, there are different types maybe, what would be the length of the protein, how easy it is to manufacture, thermal stability, cost, anything and everything. You have to select from that set of parameters to the things that are the most important to what is relevant to you. So I want my protein to work. I want my protein to be easily manufacturable. I want it to be deliverable anywhere in the world. So that's why it needs to be thermally stable, because like you can't carry a fridge around with you everywhere. Things like that. Once you know these very specific parameters, you can go to possible solutions, which I will not cover because I don't know protein engineering. Then, like we mentioned, GrowMax, if you remember, the person sits down, learns how to use the simulation tool. Here, that is GrowMax. They run the calculations and the simulations, and then they see how it's looking. Will it even work? Before they ever even synthesize the a vaccine in the real world. And depending on what sort of solution makes the best combination of parameters, and almost certainly you will not have the best in each parameter, you can only optimize the whole ensemble. You validate your results according to the parameters, which is step 5. And again, disclaimer, it's not going to work the first time. You're probably going to have to go in a circle because it's the way it is. I mean, you will almost certainly go in a circle a few times, but in the end, it will work out. And this is why research is going to take, usually it takes a year or two of just on the engineering method, barring the scientific method and the first half and the last part and all of that. Just have to sit down and jugaad everything out with your knowledge that you have and basically settle on the best solution. And finally, the results. You have your engineering method, you optimized everything, and now you have the result. You have the protein that works best, at least you think. And now you have to convince the world that it is the best answer. And that's where these results come in. As you can see, maybe some of you might recognize this. Note to the people from MIT, you're probably going to have to study this in semester 4, so maybe pay attention. So this is what you call a normal curve or a normal probability distribution. And this is what the world uses as one of the ways to basically see if the result is valid. Or in more simple terms, does your result make sense? So before I continue on, shout out to Wikipedia, which just celebrated 20 years birthday a few days ago. This is all from Wikipedia. So helping researchers since 20 years. And coming back, the null hypothesis. What is a null hypothesis? If you remember, a hypothesis needs to be made in the scientific method. A null hypothesis is in general a negation of that. In simple terms, if my researcher says that my protein method is going to cause the protein to stay for longer, and I am going to be more immune to corona for like maybe a year, 2, I don't need to take 2 doses. Null hypothesis will say, if you give the protein, there's no change. Okay. And I just explained, there is the researcher's hypothesis. And the one more thing that one must consider is a closed set of possibilities. Now, in reality, these two are not the only things that close the set, as they say. Either you give the protein and it protects you from corona, or you give the protein and nothing happens, or you give the protein and the person catches corona. This closes the set of possibilities. And once you have the closed set, you come down to the statistics. And what you basically calculate is something called the statistical significance of your results, depending on your trial and how many people showed positive effect, negative effect, no effect, placebos, all of that. You make this graph, you select a parameter, here maybe the number of people maybe, or time to immune response, or anything, I don't know. You select these parameters in the engineering method. So these parameters, you plot a graph, you plot the variation, you see what's the mean, and you plot it for the null hypothesis plus any of the hypotheses that are not your own in the closed set. So basically no effect and detrimental effect, you'll plot it for this. And then you will say is that you will calculate the p value, which is the probability value that say that I did the study and I got, let's say, the number of people that showed an immune response. Okay, that's my parameter. So the number of people that showed an immune response is somewhere around 5. And please note the red curve, which is the standard normal curve. Sigma is equal to 1. Let's say that's 5. Okay, I got 5 people with a positive immune response. And in the placebo group, as usual, as expected, 0 people got an immune response. What you're going to do is you're going to put in 5, you're going to substitute 5 in this, and from 5 to infinity, you're going to calculate the probability of any result lying in that interval. And this table below will help you. This table below says z is equal to 0, 5, 2.8652 e minus 7. What this means is that given that 0 people on average showed an immune response, where I did not give them my protein, But after I gave them my protein, 5 people showed me a response on average. There is a 2.8665 to E minus 7 probability that this would happen, and my protein was not the reason why it happened. I hope you understand. This is basically telling you that you, by fluke, got the result. And 2.86652 is the probability that you got the result by a fluke. So there are different probabilities. Not all things are this stringent, I would say. And you can probably, it's fine if you got 2, but again, in a vaccine trial, you are responsible for people's health. If you got the average number of people that showed a response as 2, that's not good enough. If you're designing airplane parts, if the average number of times your this thing failed after you redesigned it is also somewhere close to how it was if you use the original design, again, that's not good. So these things are the stringent standards, they vary. And the most stringent ones you'll find is sigma 6, or what corresponds to 6 times the variance. And for the normal curve, that's going to be 6 because the variance is 1. So that is still a infinitesimal value. So most results usually are happy with 2 or 3. Sometimes you don't even need to calculate it. Like say, for example, if you're doing NLP, you don't really have to sit down and see, okay, how many times did I fail? What is the statistical significance? If you fail, that means that there's a problem within a model that you have to fix. But usually you won't use this sort of statistical significance for that because it's not a critical thing. Like if it fails, people's health or lives and all are not on the line, basically. So wherever it's critical, even something like a hard drive not being able to retain data that was stored in there, that is also critical. So critical ka definition varies, but things that need to be the way they are usually subjected to this sort of analysis. So I hope that clears the whole methodology of doing the research itself and how to publish the research and what do you need to do before you even started with the physical work. And after you're done through all of this, you have to do 3 things, which I will briefly mention, which is 1, you have to see the validity of your results using methods like these, not specifically this, but this is the standard one. 2, you need to see how to reproduce the result you got. If somebody looks at your paper and your paper does not include how to get the same results to the same error that you probably got, then people will look at your research in a skeptical light. You need to provide enough data in your paper to reproduce those results almost exactly bang on accuracy ke saath to what you got. It should be similar. I'm not saying that the errors should be lower. I'm saying that the errors you get and the errors they get should be similar. So reproduction data needs to be there. And throughout this process, whatever resources you are referring, maybe you should set some of them aside to cite. And in the later parts, you will understand what citation is. But things, textbooks, papers, review papers, whatever, that helped you significantly move toward your optimum solution in the engineering method. Ideally, you should cite them. There are also some other papers that help you build a background toward why you are doing things the way you're doing. Those also should be cited ideally, but these papers should be kept aside so that you can cite them later. Yeah, I think that concludes this quite a long segment, and I hope you guys were able to follow. So I think I can hand off to Shubha now, who will take you into the second part of this seminar, where we will cover how to go about publishing your result.
All right. Hi, everyone. So that was a pretty long-winded discussion, and everything else that's remaining to be said is pretty self-explanatory, quite simplistic in nature. So, yeah, thanks, Achintya. So this slide is all about evaluating and trying to understand whether your results are worth publishing, right? And this infographic is quite simple. But apart from that, since results are the most important part of your entire paper, I'll just describe a couple of things to keep in mind. So this section should present your findings objectively, explaining them largely in text. And this is also where you show how your results contribute to the body of scientific knowledge. So you have to be clear and logical. It's important not to interpret your results that comes in like the discussion and conclusions. That comes in a different section. That's discussion and conclusions. So you can base the sequence of this text on the tables, figures, and graphs that best represent your individual findings. So if you have anything significant, then that needs to be emphasized clearly. You can compare them with existing literature review. Ask yourself if there's anything new that you've added to this topic. If what you've set out to do is extremely novel and hasn't been done before, everything that you referred to get to this point, see how those existing papers helped you reach the conclusions that you did. Think about the implications of your work. And that's about it with this slide. So we'll move on to the next one. So right after you're done with your experiments, what we do is it's now time to write them into a coherent and concise paper, which so now it's time to write a concise paper which tells the story of your research. So since researchers are busy people, it's very crucial, it's imperative that your research articles are quick and that they're easy to read and digest. And for this reason, papers generally follow a standard structure, which allows the readers to easily find the information that they're looking for. So there are different types of publications which are available in different fields. So for instance, a clinical trial is possible only in the field of medicine, but an empirical study is more common in the field of social sciences, say. So it's important to just remember that not all journals publish every kind of article. So therefore, most journal publishers, they provide prospective authors with accurate and specific guidelines for the different articles that they publish. Okay, and this is basically in order for you to understand the ways in which you can disseminate your work and identify what kind of article would be suitable for your area of study. So firstly, we have original research. I'll just quickly speed through these because it's very easy to just look them up yourself as well. So original research is the most common type of journal manuscript used to publish like full reports of data from research. It may be called an original article, research, just article, depending on the journal. So this format, it's suitable for many different fields and different types of studies. It includes a full introduction, methods, results, everything from a proper introduction to like discussion sections. Then we have short reports or letters, and these papers communicate brief reports of data from original research that editors believe will be interesting to many researchers, and that will likely stimulate further research in the field. Then we have review articles, And I know, like, the first time you go up to a professor when you're an undergrad, like in your first or second year, this is something, at least in my department in aeronautical engineering, we are asked to write review articles. So this is basically providing a comprehensive summary of research on a certain topic, and it gives you a perspective of the state of the field in which you want to work on and where it is heading. Like, and they're often actually written by leaders or like forerunners of a particular domain, after like invitations for the same by the editors of a journal. So, but one thing to their credit is that reviews are widely read, and especially for people like you guys who are just starting out, who want to look for a full introduction to their field, and they're highly cited as well. So then we have case studies, and these articles just have specific instances of interesting phenomena. So the goal is basically to just make other researchers aware of the possibility that a specific phenomenon might occur, right? So that's it. Then we have methodologies, and these articles just present a new experimental method, test, or procedure. It could be entirely new, it may offer a better version of an existing method. So it should basically be able to demonstrate a recent advance on whatever it is that's currently available. Okay, so we'll move on to the next slide. Okay, so this part is super important. Um, so if you've ever opened your mail to like extremely flattering invitations to recruit colleagues to prepare a special edition for a journal that suspiciously sounds um, just like a well-reputed journal, chances are that you're being scammed majorly. So the publisher might promise a quick publication date with assurance that all writers obtain the benefit of like a good impact score. But it's important to remember that all the publisher actually wants is a payment for each paper in the issue, with all the other benefits being empty promises. So the result is much hard work on the part of you, the individual who's actually doing research, who gets these mails without the benefit of a good peer review and publication in bona fide academic journal with like a genuine impact score. Okay, so the goal, according to all of us here at the Research Society, and I'm sure Yuvraj also agrees, if the goal is to reliably publish your work and make an impact in your field, which it should be, then there are a couple of steps that you need to consider. Firstly, make sure to investigate the journal that you're applying for thoroughly. Check its websites, the services which index it. Indexing is very important. And read all the small print, especially the description of its peer review process. It needs to have a proper review process. Just whether like your paper will be available for longevity and perpetuity. It's a prerequisite for any journal which is seeking to be indexed. All right. So then you examine the website. If there are any spelling, grammatical errors, typographical errors, does it feel like something which is the output of a reputable operation? So just asking yourself a couple of questions to make sure that they're legit, checking like the contact or location details, if they involve any Yahoo or Gmail addresses and post office boxes, then that's like a no-no. If you, an added perk that you may have, if you recognize a board member, is you could directly drop them a line. They should be accessible, the publishers, and get their impressions of the title of your manuscript and stuff like that. Also, people place way too much faith in either blacklists or whitelists because nothing is that black or white. So inclusion on the former, like blacklists, it doesn't automatically denote guilt, nor does it imply like absolute innocence either. So it's better to just trust your instincts, check with your mentor, And most people go for this or are tempted for this route is if they've been rejected. So don't keep sliding lower and lower down the ladder. Maybe you need to pause, rethink your situation and the fundamentals of your problem statement, maybe through a different lens. So, though painful, it will be less so than making the wrong decision and having to live with a bad reputation and sort of putting other commendable OA journals, open access journals, doing good work at risk of being undermined of like undermining themselves and being complicit in all these fraudulent practices. So that's about it. That is also, even the next slide is pretty much elaborating the same thing. um, Achintya, can you move to, yeah. So these are like places where you can find, right, for here, I've taken the example of those who want to pursue nursing. So for you, there are resources, directories, especially like the directory of open access journals has pretty much every journal under the sun. So just like type out whatever field it is that you want to work in, so that you find and then check like a whole bunch of details that they mention there itself, which is accessible. So yeah, next slide. Just a few more links. We'll be passing on this presentation on the chat so you guys can just go over it, maybe ask questions even later on. Yeah, the next one. I think that concludes my section, and I think Achintya can take on from here.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, so coming to the probably the most important part, how do you actually write a paper? So why do we need to follow a strict format of writing a paper? So we've repeatedly seen examples of knowledge getting lost throughout history. So you talk about, we as Indians pride ourselves about our Indian architecture, our Ayurveda, things like that, and a lot of it has gotten lost over the periods of time, and they are being rediscovered now. So that is one of the major reasons why we need to document it so strictly. And if the works of the past 2000 years were not documented this strictly, today would look very different. So these are some of the original scripts of some very famous papers, which were obviously Galileo, then Mathematica Principia from Newton, which gave us mechanics. This was Mendeleev with his pea plants, and relativity of Einstein. So these are the actual copies, and as you can see, they were also documented in a formal manner, which actually helped us reach where we are today. So just to give an example, I have a live copy here. So normally journals and conferences give you a template. It will either be in the Word format, like you can see on my screen, or it will be a latex document. If it's a latex document, then it becomes a little simpler for you to put your information into that template. If it's a Word document, then it's something called a live template. So it will give you the exact things which you have to put into it. So this is the IEEE template for a specific conference. So as you can see, this will be how you would have to put your names and your affiliations, the abstract, the introduction. I'll go into the parts of a paper in detail after this, but this just to give an example of how a template actually looks. So as you can see, it tells you exactly how tables should look like, how images should be put in, images should be put in a text box, how references should be done, and so on. So it is extremely crucial to follow this to the T. And I will go into why that is in just a minute. So yeah, coming back to my presentation. So first of all, there's the abstract. So there are two types of abstracts. One is your submission abstract, and the other is the manuscript abstract. So the submission abstract it'll probably be 1 to 2 pages, and this is the one which you have to submit normally to conferences, and they'll ask you to submit this before they take your entire manuscript, and this can make or break your paper acceptance. Your submission abstract should be a brief, but not too brief, demarcation of everything you have done and all the evaluations you have used and what your results exactly are. And the manuscript abstract is the few lines which you see in the beginning of a paper. So this is what you call a manuscript abstract, which will be probably 1 paragraph, maybe around 70 to 80 words, which is the normal template used. And this will be This is actually contrary to popular beliefs. A lot of you might think that it's the first thing, so you should write this first, and a lot of professors do say that that maybe it will give you a better idea, but actually most senior researchers and professors ask you to write the manuscript abstract after you've written the first complete draft of the paper. Why is that? The reason is because once you've written the first draft of the paper, you have accumulated everything you want to put into the paper, and you can tick and see exactly what you can write in the manuscript abstract. So it should give a clear idea of all the work that has been done. Every experiment, every algorithm, everything which has been run, it should be written in brief, like in a statement that this was done. Clearly stating the novelty. This is crucial. Again, this is what defines whether your paper will be accepted in a elite journal, in a good journal, in a mediocre journal, or won't be accepted at all. Evaluation metrics. What were the metrics which were used? In terms of algorithms, it will be runtime, memory use. In terms of materials, it will be physical evaluation criteria, etc. Then you have whatever the graphs and comparisons which was made to the existing work. 1 second. Yeah, sorry. So the fourth point will be the graphs and the comparisons to the existing work which exists. So you'll obviously have a background of references which would have used some sort of metrics to compare their results, and how does your results stand in comparison to them. Now the fifth point is very interesting. So there should be this again a cheap trick, but there should be one statement referring to an existing popular paper which is relevant to your work. This is kind of an academic clickbait, you can call it, but this is again something which is done, and you learn these things as you keep writing papers. So this actually gets people's attention, and even the reviewer will see, okay, you've referenced this very famous paper which everybody knows about, then okay, you know what you're talking about, and maybe you've actually contributed something to it. So this is kind of a clickbait, but it actually works and is very important. Then relevance of the work done. So whatever you have done, what does it infer? What can you infer from it? What are the applications? And followingly, one statement regarding the application. Now these are 7 points. These should be 7 statements, which will give you about 70 to 80 words. So this is how your abstract should look. Now the composition of a research paper. So this is how a research paper should actually look approximately. So 8% should be the abstract, 10% should be the global introduction. So as you can see, there is a global introduction and there's a local introduction. So what does this mean? So the global introduction is the first paragraph which you see on the first page. So this will include an introduction and a generic introduction to the broad field under which your work comes. So for example, if you have used some sort of a novel algorithm in, let's say, deep learning or something like that, then this global introduction should give an introduction of what deep learning is and where does it fit into the machine learning paradigm. And similarly, if you're talking about something like materials, electronics, something like that, then the first paragraph should give references and a lot, maybe review papers and a good introduction of the overall topic. The local introduction should be an introduction to what you have done. So an introduction to the algorithm which you have given, maybe the mathematics behind your theory, or even like if it's from a materials perspective, then what is the background of the materials which have been used, and then the major chunk of your paper should be explanation of the novel idea. Now, what do I mean by novel idea? I'm not saying that you must have a breakthrough. Obviously, 90% of the papers are just modifications or papers in cascaded form. So this should be the part which tells the people how it's different from the existing work. Now, this might sound obvious, but people fail to do this, which is very sad. But you have to ensure that your novel idea runs throughout the paper. What I mean by this is you have to follow this format, but somewhere you have to slip in your novelty factor in each and every section there is. And I hope I'm making sense, but again, this is something which reviewers look at. Then you have your evaluation of the idea. So whatever you have proposed, whatever work you have done, whatever algorithm you have done, whatever material you have synthesized, how have you evaluated it? What were the criteria? What was the exact statistical models which were used? Everything should be given in this part. Then you have the inferences and applications. What can you infer from the results? What does it tell you? What are your own personal biased opinions about your results? Everything should come here. And also the applications. Now, theoretical people might say, our work is mostly theoretical, mostly mathematical. What do we say in this area? But you still can write a few statements about applications. It makes a difference. If you submit a complete theoretical paper, and if you give that one paragraph about the applications in real life, let's say you come up with a mathematical concept in calculus, and then you do your research, and then you actually do a background research of where can your mathematical formula fit in, and you see that okay, it can fit into something like, let's say, atomistic simulations, or let's say astronomical dynamics and things like that. And if you can just give that one paragraph about the applications, your chances of getting accepted actually increases, and there's actual data on this. Then at the end, you should have conclusion and further work. Again, people miss out the further work, and people are also kind of insecure. They're like, okay, why should I write my own ideas? People might copy it, but you should. This shows that you are serious about your research. This shows that you did not just want a paper for, let's say, you want to go for a master's and you just want a paper to show on your CV. This further work actually shows that you are interested in research as a career. It's very important at the undergraduate level. And honestly, we are not going after breakthroughs right now. So even if somebody copies it, it's not going to be a big deal. And then you have the acknowledgement, which is also very important. And you should thank your professors and the department. And if you have gotten funding from somewhere, it's very important to mention that here. So this is the basic composition of a research paper. Now some tips and tricks which I want to share with you guys, which I've picked up along my own journey. So first point should be format, format, format. Now reviewers hate mistakes while formatting, and when I mean hate, they absolutely hate it. Like if your paper is on the verge of getting accepted and you made small mistakes in not following the format they have given, there is a high chance they'll reject it. Because you have to understand one conference, and another disclaimer I have to give, whatever I'm talking about is for a good or an elite conference or a journal, and at least a good indexed and impact factor more than one or two journal. So they get around, a conference gets about 2,000 papers, and a journal gets around 2 to 3,000 papers also. So it's not a big deal for them to reject a few on the flip of a coin, which will happen if you piss off the reviewers. So be very careful with the format. Do not, in any case, make bold statements in your manuscript unless you have done some groundbreaking work. These are some examples which you should absolutely avoid. The results shown by Zhang et al. Are wrong. This should not be said. The algorithm presenter does not have any failed cases. The sample fabricator shows much better conductive properties than what exists in literature. Now, these statements should not be made unless you're 100% sure. Because when you write a name like this and you say they are wrong, if it's a very good journal, they are going to ping that person up and say that, okay, this guy is claiming this, you need to help our reviewer judge his work. And this actually happens, and it's happened with a lot of people. Similarly, algorithm, no failed cases, which is honestly, it's not possible. Like, okay, you can argue with the N versus NP problem, but it's not possible. So you should not write things like this. And this exists in literature. If you are not 100% sure, do not write something like this. Because honestly, the people reviewing your work have built the literature, so they know it inside out. So be very careful. Similarly, use the word novel with care. Only use the term if you're 100 positive that it does not exist in literature. Many a times, a lot of people ask, okay, like at an undergraduate level, you're not going to do something absolutely new, which is absolutely correct. It's going to be a modification or a change of or of a slight change from an existing paper, which is fine. If there is an existing paper, cite it and clearly write what the differences or the improvements are that you have made. This is something, again, people make this error a lot, where they feel that okay, if they cite the paper, people know that they have copied, and people will see that it's not really new and it'll get rejected. It's actually the inverse. People will see that okay, you have the background knowledge of the area, you're aware of what the area is up to, and also you're not hiding your the fact that you have taken inspiration from this. And this can also help you because they are going to find out. Even if you don't cite it, they're going to find out. So there's no use in hiding it. This actually gives an opportunity to tell them, okay, that this exists, but we have done this differently. Now, very important to use technical terms. Do not use general terms. Do not use informal language. So in terms of path planning, let's say there's a vehicle which you have developed a novel algorithm for, then the vehicle should be called a differential drive bot or a differential drive robot or whatever drive it is. Point being, use the technical term. Avoid informal language. Again, this is something, another one of the many pet peeves of reviewers have, which is they hate informal language. Do not. You can go extremely formal. That is absolutely fine. It might start sounding weird to you. That's okay. Being extremely formal is better than being slightly informal. Keep that in mind. Now, point number 6 is very interesting. This is something which even people who are well into the research career sometimes miss out and don't do. But this is very, very, very important. And if you talk to any senior professor, any senior reviewer, they will actually say that this plays a very big role. Where you should read the past publications of the journal and conferences to understand the writing style preferred by them specifically. So I just want to give you an example. So let's say there are two types of journals. One is the Journal of IEEE Censors Journal, and one is the IEEE Journal of Electron Devices. Now, these two journals will have many papers which are very similar. Let's say you come up with a new sensor, which you've used some new materials. You've run a power saving an algorithm which does not take up too much energy and memory, and you have optimized the energy usage of the sensor. Now this is your paper. Now this paper can be submitted to either of the journals. Now if you submit to the IEEE Sensors Journal, you will notice that most of their papers cite application based concepts in their introduction, and throughout the manuscript, there will be an underlying application oriented theme. And the paper will be full of experimental images, graphs, and less of mathematics. So, coming back to our example of our sensor, then it will be more of what you did, what were the image, what were the characterizations you have done, and things like that. And if the same paper is published in the theoretical uh, if the same paper is published in a theoretical journal, then the same things would be there. But let's say that you have given the graphs and images, then there will be an in-depth mathematical analysis of the data inferences. So, okay, fine, you've used this material, but then there will be an in-depth study of why this material, what are its properties, how do you what led you to believe that the graphs you've got are better than what are shown. And if it was in the application oriented paper, then you just superimpose the graphs and show them that okay, your graph is giving a better output. Whereas if it's a theoretical oriented journal, then you'll have to mathematically show that your graph is like just putting the graph is not enough. So I hope I made this clear. And it's very important to read journal, and it'll become very evident once you start reading multiple papers in the same journal. It'll become very evident what they prefer. Now, images and graphs printed should be of high quality. There's again another mistake which people make. They just print in MATLAB or Python and put it on the paper. Again, reviewers hate this. Use software such as Origin. There is TechPlot. All of this is free software, so do not hesitate in using this, and you should use it. And the eighth point: do not use paint. Please, please, absolutely do not use paint for editing. It is very evident. Now, focus of the writing should be on the novelty factor. Again, the focus of the entire paper, the introduction, the global introduction, the local introduction, the major part, the conclusion, everything, the focus should be on the novelty factor. What is that small change that you have done? What are you improving? What are the inferences which you can take from your paper which hasn't been done in literature? And a very important point here is that it's as important to publish negative results as it is to publish positive results, because people should know that okay, we've tried this and it did not work. For example, let's say that you tried the synthesis using a certain method and you did not go to get very good results. So do not hesitate to include your negative results. Language, there are several resources available. I'm not going into this because this is something you can read. I'll just show you. This is one of the things published by Oxford. So you can see that they have given statements which they want you to use. So establishing why your topic is important. So X is the main major cause. So these are the action words which should be used. Similarly, the different categories which exist. So you can go through this and put this up later. So you can go through it and you can ask me if you have any questions. Now the references and bibliography quickly. So again, follow the format while putting references. You can use reference managers such as Mendeley, MS Word plugins, etc. But still manually check it once because they are sometimes prone to errors. There are several citation styles such as APA, MLA, Chicago, IEEE International, and please again be very careful because these are small things which can actually decide whether a paper will get accepted or not. And this again, I just want to emphasize on this: error in doing some references can get your paper thrown out immediately. As I said, they get 3,000 papers, they do not care. So do not make this mistake. Now, the last slide which I have is plagiarism check. There are several software such as Turnitin, and there are a lot of at our level. So, like the journals, the software which they use, it costs about $50 to check one manuscript. So obviously we can't use it. We'll have to stick to things like Turnitin. So similarly, we'll have to extrapolate because this is the resource which is available to us. So 15% in Turnitin will correspond to 25 to 30% in a professional plagiarism scanner. What I mean by this is if your Turnitin is saying that, okay, there's 15% plagiarism in your manuscript, then their professional scanner will tell them, oh, no, it's more, 25% or maybe 30. So you have to estimate according to the software you are using. So what are the acceptable percentages? So in elite conferences and journals, I'm talking about Nature, I'm talking about Science, I'm talking about the IEEE elite conferences. The actual percentage limit is 5 to 15% and tending to 5%. This is the actual limit, that the plagiarism should not be above 5%. And the Turnitin limit similarly would be 10%, because wait, it's linear. Now, good conferences and journals which we can look at. Again, these are not conferences which you see where they invite students. There's student conferences. No, they are good conferences, good and journals where the actual percentage will be about 10 to 20%, and the Turnitin limit would be about 15 to 20%. Now, just quickly, this actually means that your the novel data should be this much. So all the softwares remove all the common words, remove all the proper nouns, and remove everything which is the and articles, everything, and then whatever is left, that is the percentage count which is showing. So this is what you should keep in mind. So for the last part, quickly I'll hand it over to Ankita, and yeah, she'll bring this to an end.
Yeah, thanks, Achintya. Am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible. Go ahead.
I had a small doubt. Can we ask now, or should it be kept for the last?
We can take the doubts at the end if it's all right.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah, is my screen visible?
Yeah, it's visible. Go ahead.
Okay. So yeah, that was very insightful, whatever Achintya said. So yeah, I know it's been a while, but this is the last part. So and yeah, coming to the last part, the final step of a research project or research, whatever you take up, is publishing, finding the journal or the conference that you want to publish in. So now we're going to see like how do you choose a journal or a conference, what are the criterias that you look into, and which websites and databases are the most useful in that case. So to start with, there are two ways that you can present your research: journals and conferences. For those who don't know what conference proceedings are, basically once you present in a journal, all the good conferences, they generally have a, maybe they have a tie up with a journal, or they have a like periodic publication of their own, in which whatever you presented, the paper you presented, is published. So there are two ways, and here I want to address an important question, which is, why do we publish? So the whole point of publishing our work is putting it out into the world, right? Putting it out something that can be used by the society. So if you publish in a journal which no one ever even refers to, no one ever goes to, which has like no citations, or you present in a conference where it does not have a proceeding, your research is basically lost. Like whatever you did, there's no value of that. And we don't want that, right? We want our research to be accountable. So how, so how can we find out like which journals are the right ones to publish? So for that, the first thing we need to know is what all journals exist in our field. And for that, there are a lot of websites and databases for like journals which have records of journals and conference proceedings. So I've mentioned some of the most popular ones here. Scopus, Springer, these contain both. Like Scopus, in fact, contains almost all kind of academic publications. You'll find books, you'll find journals, conference proceeding, even like trade magazines for that matter. Similarly, Springer is also there. World Catalog of Scientific Journals. It is a database for, if a journal is good enough, then it should be there in the World Catalog of Scientific Journals. Similarly, you have the journals directory. And then there's Google Scholar, as we all know, which is based off, Google's, like Google Scholar itself scrapes and makes the database. So, and then when we come to conference proceedings, all these organizations that are there for research, like IEEE, ACM, ASME, they have their kind of own digital collections. So, and other than that, there's conference proceeding citation index as well, where you can go and find conference proceedings. So when it comes to journals, what you generally do is there is a stipulated time deadline for submitting your abstract. Once your abstract is reviewed, they ask you for your to submit your entire paper, and it kind of works that way for journals. For conferences, you first like submit your abstract or sometimes even the whole paper, and then there's uh, they send their feedback, and then there's a day where you need to go to a certain place to present your paper in the conference, and then there's a date of releasing of the proceedings. So for maintaining all of this, there is a database called EDAS, Conference and Journal Management System, where you can find all of this if you just go to the site and like create a account. You'll find all of this, like which conferences are there, when is the publication date, and all of that. Okay, so now we know what are the databases we can refer to if we want to find out what all journals are available. But how do we choose a journal? How do we judge that okay, this is a good journal or this is not? So this is where we come to the concept of citations. Citation is nothing but when one paper explicitly refers to another paper. So citation is basically a proof of how relevant your research is, how good your research is. So based on the concept of citation, there are several metrics that are developed. So I've mentioned a few of them, and I'll give you a demo soon on how you can use these metrics to filter out and find good journals. And before that, I'll just describe them very briefly. So quartiles are basically when we come to journals. Journals are divided into 4 sections based on how good their performance are or how many citations there are. So the top 25% of journals come in the quartile 1. Next 25 come in the quartile 2. Next 25 in quartile 3, and the last 25% which you have comes in quartile 4. So generally quartile 4 journals are always a big no, because generally there's no credibility to those journals. Quartile 1 journals are really good journals. If you have done some really good research, you should aim for quartile 1 journals. And other than that, generally quartile 2 journals are what is good enough at an undergraduate level. Now coming to impact factor is, like it says, the impact of your paper in like the academia. So when we generally say impact factor, it refers to the journal citation reports. And what these all that I've mentioned here are, they are just different metrics for calculating for a journal, in which they calculate basically the number of citations that the journal has received upon some year. Like there are different like minute differences are there. Like in journal citation, what happens is, it is like citation in a year to document published in like previous 2 years. And in sites in SJR, it is like it takes into account the previous 3 years. And what happens in like site score is basically it kind of gives a sorry, yeah, site score is the 3-year one. And then SJR basically gives you like a uh, weighted citation. Like if a good journal is citing your paper, that means your paper is actually better compared to like a quartile 4 journal citing. So these are just different parameters to check, like what is the how many citations has the journal or your paper received. H index is comparatively new, and it is you'll find that a lot in news. And to explain it simply, it is like if the journal has like H number of papers, then what is the maximum value of H, such that the H papers have gotten like H citations. So this is there is a bit of a controversy regarding H index, like whether it is actually useful or not, but you will find this everywhere, H index. And last is cited half-life and citing half-life. And cited half-life is basically the citation made to objects within the journal, whatever articles are there within the journal. And citing half-life is basically the citations that are made from the journal. So what happens is, the lesser your cited half-life and citing half-life is, which means the fresher the journal is. Like the journal keeps up with what is currently going on in the research community. So now I'll just demonstrate with like uh, a few demos that how can you go about filtering for journals or conferences. So to start with, I'll go to Scopus that I had mentioned, and uh, in Scopus you can see, so there's search, and using Scopus you can search for just normal documents and research papers as well. But I'll show you how to search for journals or even conference proceedings for that matter. So yeah, just a second. And yeah, I can select subject area or title, anything I can select here. So you can see there are various categories that you can select from. And then when you come down, so I'm not selecting okay, I'll just enter, like, suppose artificial intelligence. um, so I'll just enter something, okay, and yeah, it'll give me results according to whatever I've entered. And then as you can see on this side, see, like I mentioned, the quartiles. So when you click on first quartile, if you apply this filter of first quartile, and as you can see here, you have journals, conference proceedings, trade publications. So you can do this, you can apply the filters, and you can actually check. So okay, in this case there's no source, but you can check, like, in first quartile, what do you have. So okay, one thing that I forgot to mention here is journals are not conferences are not categorized into quartiles. They have like grade rating, like A star conferences, A conference, B conference. So it works that way. So one such site is Scopus, where you can check. Another such website is Simago. Now here I'll show you later as well how you can, another way of using Simago. Here you can just go for journal ranks and you can explore. And again, you can see here we have the quartiles mentioned, quartile 1. These are all like quartile 1 journals. You have the H index mentioned over here, and then they give, it mentions the total number of citations and so on. And again, you have a lot of criterias over here. So using this, you can basically search for journals and conferences which are related to your topic, your field, and so on. So this is one way of going about it. Another way is, what if someone suggests the name of a journal to you, and how do you check the credibility of that journal? So for that, okay, so I'll just go to World Catalog of Scientific Journals, and I'll take a random example of a journal. Suppose I take the example, suppose some senior or someone suggested me International Journal of Engineering Research and Technology. Sounds pretty legit, right? So I'll just enter it and I'll search. And here you come to know that it actually does not exist in the World Catalog of Scientific Journals. So already, you already kind of know that, okay, maybe this is not that good of a journal. And next you can again check it over here. So you can check it in the journals directory. This is again another website. So you check here and you don't find anything again. So like all these things themselves kind of point to the fact that, okay, maybe this is not a good journal. Now, if it's not there in the World Catalog of Scientific Journals, it will mostly not be there in the JCR website. So I'll directly go to the Simago website in that case, and I'll try to find it here. And here I can just search for it. And again, I'll search for this. Okay, so here you get some options, and yeah, there, finally it's there, International Journal of Engineering Research and Technology, and you can see it has a H index of 5. H index of 5 is really bad. Like, at least it should have an H index of around 20 or 30 to be considered good. So you can see here, and then when you go down, see, here it shows the different fields that exist, and it also shows the quartile at which it is on those different fields. So you can see it is mostly quartile 4 in all of the fields. You go more down, it shows you the citations, like it shows you the graph, how it is. It shows you citations per document, and many more, like here to understand how good the journal actually is. So here again, it shows you, like, you can see the amount of uncited documents compared to cited documents. So naturally, it tells that the journal is not a good journal. So this was an example I wanted to give of, a journal that is not so good. And next, let's take the example of, another journal which like exists in the World Catalog of Scientific Journals. So now when you search for it, you can see you get the complete data. You even get a journal description of what all is there. You get publisher name, you get everything. So naturally, first thought is that, okay, it is at least there in the World Catalog of Journals. So now next, what we can do, journals, we can go to the JCR website, and here we can search for, just a second. Okay, wait, I'll just reload the site because okay, just a second. I think there's some issue, but it should, yeah, there it is. So I'll type in the name of the journal. I've taken the example of Microsystem Technologies. So yeah, I'll just type in. And now JCR gives a very detailed information about the journal. And, like you can see here, it gives you it gives you year wise, it gives you the total number of citations, the impact factor over time. It gives you, like, it gives you all of the criterias that you can possibly imagine for a journal. See, like I had mentioned, cited half-life and citing half-life. So it's around 4.5, which means that half of the whatever is there in the journal, half of it has been cited from research papers that are recent, that are like below 4 years, and half of them have been cited from papers that are, more old than 4 years, so older than 4 years. So using this also, you can understand that, okay, how relevant is the research that is published in this journal. So again, 4 years is actually a lot of time. Like, it's not keeping that much up with the current research, if you think of it. And then as you come down, you have a lot of categories over here. So when you come to box plot gives you a very nice representation and shows you, you can go to the website yourself after this and actually explore all of this. So it kind of shows you how many papers have been cited, more than what is generally there in, like, quartile 1, and this is like the quartile 4 mark, this is the quartile 1 mark. So it kind of shows you all of that. And similarly, when you go to, like, rank, it again, it shows you what is the ranking has been every year. And another important factor to check here is also that, like, maybe it has somehow jumped up to quartile 2 this year, but actually it is generally a quartile 3 or a quartile 4 journal. So you don't want to take that risk by just going, seeing what is the ranking of the current year. So you should also check that once. And then again, here it will give you more, like, citing details and all. And when you come to journal relationships, you can also see what kind of what topic of papers are actually published most in these journals. So, like, as you can see here, it's like, I think applied physics is the most or yeah, is the most published, although it's like a microsystem technologies journal. So this is basically just, I wanted to show, like, how you can search for journals and, find their validity, check their validity. And coming to conferences, you generally, like, you have the Google Scholar, the publication list, and you can go through that and find, like, here you can see the CVPR conference is mentioned. So again, even in Scopus, like I said, you will find for conference proceedings. So you can check that, and then you can actually visit the websites for those, and kind of keep a track of when the dates are, when the submissions are, and so on. So yeah, I think with that I'm done with my portion, and yeah, I think with that we can wrap up the session.
So, guys, we've tried to answer as many of your questions on the chat as possible, but here we'd just like to conclude a session that has gone on for more than 2 hours. So, thank you so much for staying put and listening to us so patiently and actively engaging also. And we want to thank Thrust as well for proposing this event and seeing through the end of it. And yeah, thank you. Thank you for being here. And we'll have a lot more events of this sort in the future. So if there's anything that you want to know about what we do or what we're planning to do, then feel free to text either text me, Shubha, Ankita, Achanta, or Kritika, the executive board members, anytime that you want. So yeah, with that, we'll wrap this up. Thank you.
You can follow our Insta handle @researchsoc for updates. We post our posters on that page. So yeah, you can follow us there.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Will the meeting, this recording be published anywhere?
Shubha.
So we might make it accessible to the people who've come here, but for the ones who aren't here right now, we might not. So we'll see about that. Do you need the recording right away or something?
No, there are certain parts of the presentation which I would like to
Mm-hmm.
refer at a later time, so I was looking for the recording.
Okay, sure. Since you were here the whole time, we can definitely provide that for you. I'll keep a mental note to send it over to you.
All right, okay. Thank you.
Okay. No worries. Are there any other questions anybody has?
Mr. Biswas raised his hand in the middle. Do you have a question?